welcome you to the second day of the Bay Area Chuseok Festival. It's my special honor to introduce you to tonight's panel discussion, The Spirit of Suul Makers. For those of you who may not know, Suul means alcohol in Korean. I'm pleased to introduce you to our moderator this evening, Jeannie Kim. So Jeannie is the CEO of Sam's, a popular restaurant in downtown San Francisco that she's been running since 2006. And in case you're wondering, Sam's is named using the first initial of her 3 kids. In addition to Sam's, Jeannie also owns Fermentation Lab, a gastropub, and Divine Indulgence Catering, both also based in San Francisco. And she has a consulting firm to assist new restaurateurs and those who need support growing their businesses. Jeannie also happens to be an ordained minister and currently serves on the Board of Trustees at the University of Redlands and San Francisco Theological Seminary. Recently, in response to the COVID pandemic, Sam's partnered with KCI for their senior food delivery program. And during 2 months this summer, more than 6,000 banchan, or Korean side dishes, were delivered to 160 vulnerable Korean seniors in San Francisco. Sam's has also assembled a special Chuseok menu for the festival, which you can find on the samssf.com website. These include food pairings with the 3 alcohol brands that you'll be hearing about tonight. So I personally am a huge fan of Toke beer. There you go, got one right here. And Maku, there you go. And Innovatus wine. Sadly, I don't have a bottle of the wine with me this evening. If you haven't yet discovered the joys of drinking these beverages, I hope you'll check them out soon. Now, before I turn it over to Jeannie and the panel, just a few housekeeping items. So because we're using Zoom's webinar mode, that means that your video and audio are all turned off, but we welcome your questions, of course. And so please type them into the Q&A box, not the chat box, on your screen. So throughout the session, you can enter your questions there and we'll address them during the Q&A portion later. But please feel free to say hello, leave comments in the chat box, but just know that we won't be monitoring that for questions. So again, please use the Q&A box for your questions. So thanks again so much for joining us this evening and enjoy the program.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Chuseok. Welcome to the Spirit of Suul Makers. Whether you are watching K-drama or hanging out with some Korean friends, you know that Koreans love to drink. It's not only a beverage, but it's a part of the culture that's deeply embedded in the Korean spirit expressed in the form of drink. So I want to thank you all for joining us tonight as we explore the world of Suul, Korean term used for alcoholic beverages, and meet 3 young Korean American Suul makers who have crafted their unique brands of beer, makgeolli, and wine as they are working to infuse this ancient custom into American culture. Tonight, you will learn about these unique beverages, how they are made, and the spirit of these pioneers who are breaking into this competitive industry with a spirit that is deeply rooted in Korean heritage. Some say the spirit reflected in Suul is the secret to South Korea's success. At this time, if you haven't already, go and grab your favorite Suul. I have my wine, Innovatus wine right now, as we get to know these fascinating individuals who will be sharing their spirit of Suul with us tonight. If you are under the age of 21, you are more than welcome to go and grab your kombucha. So let me start by introducing you to Carol Pack. Hi, Carol.
Hello.
Carol Pack, who is joining us from New York, is the founder and CEO for Maku. She grew up in East Coast and went to college getting a degree in psychology and later went to business school and worked for ZX Ventures, where she was inspired to create a modern iteration of the ancient drink. And Maku was born in 2017. We welcome you, Carol. And secondly, we have Youngwon Lee. Hi, Youngwon.
Hi.
Youngwon is the founder and chief tokebi for Toke Beer. He's the native of South Korea, and Youngwon has more than a decade of operations, finance, sales, and brand management experience in the food and beverage industry. He moved to Eureka, California, up in northern part of California in 2017 to serve as the head of U.S. operations for the Booth Brewing Company and spearhead the brand's expansion into the American market. Young One was inspired to create Toke beer after moving to the Bay Area and seeing an opportunity to add something unique to the local brewery scene. So we welcome you, Young One. And last but not least, Cecil Park. Hi, Cecil.
Happy Chuseok!
Happy Chuseok. Cecil is the founder of Winefornia and winemaker and started Innovatis from Napa Valley. Cecil received her bachelor's degree in Korea, biotechnology engineering from Yonsei, and viticulture and enology with highest honor from UC Davis. If you don't know what enology is, I had to look it up. It's the study of wine. So since 2007, Cecil has made private label wines for PGA, LPGA tournaments, corporates, and retails. She launched her own brand, Innovatis, in 2014, and she now focuses on the wine design and vineyard development for small to medium-sized estate properties. Let's all welcome all these panelists. Good to see you all. Are you drinking?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. It's not your normal kind of panel discussion here, so you're more than welcome to drink. We're just going to have a good time getting to know each other.
Yay.
And I'm going to start with Carol. Carol, you said that while traveling to Korea, you fell in love with makgeolli. And there are those of us who may not be familiar with what makgeolli is. So can you tell us a little bit about makgeolli and its history?
Sure. So makgeolli is Korea's oldest alcohol and the most traditional Korean alcohol. I mean, who really knows when it was born, but there's records of it from the Goguryeo dynasty, you know, more than 2,000 years ago. And it is the most basic kind of fermented drink that one could make with the abundant grain that was in the country at the time, which was rice, and it's still rice. So, you know, nuruk is a compacted wheat cake or grain cake that kind of ferments in the wild. And I guess someone figured out kind of how to add it with rice and create alcohol out of it. And, you know, if you look at the history of beer and cider, like the startings of alcohol in those countries kind of happened the same way. It was just a natural fermentation based on the most abundant grain in the country. So this makgeolli was actually, that's just an informal term, but the drink fermented rice, it's actually called wonju, right? And over time, the rice settles to the bottom, and there's a clear portion on top, and then the sediments on the bottom. The entire alcohol itself is called wonju. The bottom where the rice is called takju, and then the clear part on top is called cheongju. And the cheongju was kind of given to the royal people with more money. And then the takju, which was kind of like the leftovers to be thrown away, was diluted with water and then just given out to the lower class. So this was like the alcohol of the country. The only thing at the time, there was no whiskey, you know, there was no wine. And it's evolved over time. It was the most popular drink in Korea until like, you know, the 1950s, 60s. But I think like with the Korean War, there was like a rice rationing and the government banned brewing with rice. And so the government, you know, the makgeolli industry took a hit both in like sales, but also like the quality and reputation of the drink itself, because there were all of these like bootlegged methods of creating makgeolli. And it also like after the Korean War, there was a lot more exposure to other kinds of alcohols and influenced by like the Western countries. So makgeolli kind of fell out of favor, and the Korean government, you know, has recently been pushing makgeolli because it has been declining in sales for such a long time in our country, but because it is our country's drink, they don't want it to disappear. And that's something I learned very recently. Had no idea anything about the history of makgeolli, other than like I knew that there was a stigma around it for it being like an old person's drink. So yeah, that's like kind of. And fun fact, Cheongju, the clear part at the top of this wonju, if you distill that, that becomes the soju. That's the more popular Korean alcohol.
Oh, interesting. So is it something you can make at home? I mean, it sounds really simple because you got rice and you got water and you have the yeast.
It's very simple. I've made it at home. My parents made it at home. My grandparents made it at home. And the culture of makgeolli in Korea was very much, based on home brewing. And I know people to this day still do it. And there's many, many, many craft makgeolli breweries that are very small. So it's kind of like, the country's beer, I would say. And I think it's simpler than making beer.
That's very interesting. I love makgeolli, so this is really exciting. I'm gonna have to give it a shot at home and try to make it myself too. But at what point, like Youngwon, like at what point, I know you're a beer enthusiast and you love beer, but at what point do you say, I love beer, but now I'm gonna make beer? What inspired you to do this? Because this is such a competitive industry.
It is. I've been in the alcohol industry for about 12 years, and a lot of times I used to handle wine, spirits, tequila, vodka, to Scotch whiskey, single malt whiskey, petite wine, champagne, and then I got into beer industry about 3 years ago. So I've been mostly in selling existing brands or importing and distributing. But I saw that the market, the U.S. market, there's about over 8,000 breweries. And within 10 years, about 6,000 breweries opened. And the market is getting competitive, quality is going up, and it's quite saturated. And especially out of that 8,000, about 1,000 are in California. But what I saw is that a lot of people are making IPAs, and they're quite similar to each other to an extent. And I saw an opportunity where what if we use more of a Korean and also Asian-inspired ingredients to differentiate and make something more other than IPA that's extremely, bitter to an extent. So we, started experimenting with, Korean berries like omija, gochugaru, galangal, lime, lemongrass, peppercorn. One of our most favorite was made with the bamboo leaves, and we just recently launched it again with the bamboo design on it. Because we made it with the bamboo leaves, it gives a little bit of a tea flavor to the beer. And we originally designed the label using the bamboo leaves only, but of course everyone's in California would look at it and say, hey, this looks like a cannabis. So we actually had to change the design of it and put some bamboo trees in there to make it a little bit more obvious. But those are the things I do. I saw an opportunity where I could introduce something that's new to the market and offer something different.
With the cannabis, you might find more consumers out there wanting to buy it. So I have your bamboo. It's beautiful. It's got bamboo leaves and it's green. And I'm going to open this. Oh, I know. You're all jealous now. I'm going to try. Oh, wow. It's so light and so smooth. And I'm not a huge beer drinker, but this is really good. I'm going to get drunk by the end of this session tonight, but it's really good.
So this one is a little easy way to kind of get into craft beer. If you're used to drinking more of a lager, Kasenheit for Korean, or, some, Budweiser coarse type. And it's very easy to drink, smooth, but you have that bamboo leaf flavor added to it. Our root beers with lemongrass, peppercorn, Szechuan peppercorn, that's something more experimental. It's going to be hard to imagine, but that's something quite unique. We also have an IPA made with the peach and pomegranate. So, I like to experiment and try out different types, like, how dokebis are always changing around its, shapes and forms.
Well, that kind of makes me wonder what possessed you to name it Toke beer. Can you explain what Toke beer means? Because a lot of people are going, what is that? Is that a name? Now I know Tokebi because one of my favorite K-drama was called Tokebi.
Yeah.
And so if you could talk about that a little bit.
So yeah, I wanted to bring something Korean to the brand, and I wanted to have the Korean heritage. And I was just thinking about all different types of that's whether it's a place, region, or any kind of a national like symbol. And my wife was like, "What do you think about Tokebi?" And the more I kind of searched about it, from childhood memory to reading over articles, the more I read it, I really liked it. It's Tokebi tend to like to eat, drink, play with people, and hang out. And I want to be the brand that does that. And then Tokebi is known to be kind of changing, positive energy, and it shows up left and right, and which that's what I wanted to do as a brand. I didn't want to stay still. I always wanted to change and try something new and be innovative. I wanted to sort of have that Tokebi within how we act and how we run the company. And as we're doing that, since we're a beer company, I wanted to make it sound more beerish, so it's a beer. But it also means when you add er to any kind of word, it means it's a person performing or doing such, right? So we wanted to be like the Tokebi company, acting like Tokebi, performing, stuff like that. So how we came with the name.
Well, it always helps to listen to your wife, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
That's a good one. Well, I want to ask Cecil. Cecil, you've been in this industry for a very long time, and of course, everybody knows what wine is, and really creative name, Winefornia, and you have your line called Innovatus. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, Winefornia, when I started my business in the wine, I was hoping to create something that, wine from California, basically. So it's the name Winefornia is a wine from California, your own wine from California. That's the name of my company. But Innovatus, the brand, is a entrepreneur spirit. Innovatus is a innovation in Greek word. And, I think Napa has that spirit, entrepreneurial spirit. You think about the wine world, the old world, like France and, Italy, they're the main, like a leader of the wine scene. But Napa came up like, 19th century and 20th century, and then they became this position right now. It's a very, well established already within this short period of time. And because they're like, there are a lot of immigrants, they came and then worked really, really hard to make this level. And they always, like have a like pioneer idea, and then, like a courageous, it's a very experimental, the effort to make this level of wine. So I really respect that spirit. And also as an immigrant, I'm here in EPA, there are not many Asian, and then there are not many even female winemakers, but I really respect that spirit of Napa, and I pour my spirit as well into this brand as a Innovatus, innovation spirit.
Yeah, I know that you are very well respected in Napa wine industry. And I love your wine. I mean, it's now become our favorite wine in our household, and so we don't find any other wine other than Innovatus wine. So thank you for that. But can you tell us a little bit about the difference between making, makgeolli and beer? And I know wine it just takes a long time, doesn't it?
It takes longer for aging, but fermentation itself, it's about the same. So the difference, like, not only, but the biggest difference between makgeolli and beer and wine, makgeolli and beer, they're based on the grain, like makgeolli is made out of rice, and then beer is made out of barley. So those are the grain, but grain has a starch, which is carbohydrate, and you have to convert carbohydrate to sugar. So fermentation is a conversion of sugar to alcohol. And then in order to make the conversion, you need a yeast. So, but the yeast is the soldier to do the work for the conversion. So basically, all the yeast, different yeast to make a different wine, and then the main ingredients are the difference. So like Makgeolli, she explains so well about Cheongju and the different type of the Makgeolli, but all the yeast makes all the flavor difference, and then kind of it's kind of seasoning to the Makgeolli. And beer also, based mainly there are two different beer, like a lager and then ale. And I think Young explained better, but ale is more hoppy, and then it has a different yeast that fluctuate more spurs in within the liquid fermentation tank. But the lager is a more clear type that yeast to make it a little bit more clear juice during the fermentation. And like compared to this makgeolli and beer, wine is made out of grape. But grape is a very interesting fruit compared to all other fruits like apple and then peach. Grape has a lot of a high ratio of a tartaric acid, which is a very stable and steady compared to other malic acid or citric acid. So tartaric acid is very stable to keep the grape as stable in the pH level. So it goes, like it stays long until if, we finish the fermentation and aging the process. So it's still fresh when you, after you like age 2 years of a span of, winemaking. So that's why grape is a very special fruit that we can make a wine out of it. And also the aging time is can be a lot longer than other grain use or other fruit use. So that's kind of the unique part of the wine.
I feel like we just went through, we just finished the chemistry class, science class. Carol, thank you so much for that, Cecile. Wow, that's really intense. Now I know why wines, good wines, it takes a lot of patience, because you got to wait for it to really settle and age. So age is not bad. Aging is good. So Maku, I love this Maku right here. And I picked the blueberry flavor because I love berries. I know how long it took me to come up with the name, but how long did it take you to come up with the name Maku? Because I think it's so clever.
Actually, Maku was the first name I generated. And then I think I spent a few more months, trying to come up with other names. And then I went back to Maku. But where it came from, yeah, always the first one. But where it came from was I knew that one of our biggest challenges on top of like creating a new category of alcohol in the United States was the name itself, because a lot of people, if they can't pronounce something or they don't know how to read something and they can't remember it, they'll just forget about it. And so, I wanted to be something like a Kleenex where it's like a sub-in for tissue, and I was like, okay, well, I want it to be relevant to makgeolli, but a little bit simpler. So, I knew I wanted 2 syllables, and then I started just looking up all these kind of names that are popular and fun to say. And then like K was a consonant in there. I was just reading articles on makgeolli, and I was like, oh, why can't people like spell it one way? And one of the spellings of makgeolli is the lesser popular way, but it's Makkuli. And I saw an article and it was hyphenated, which is how I came up with this first name. But I was like, oh, I could just take out the Li and it would be Maku. And then people, kept calling it Maku. And so like we were like, okay, let's put a little rice kernel on the A. So it's Maku, but with the hopes that people ultimately will remember makgeolli.
And I've never seen makgeolli because I personally love makgeolli, but I've never seen it in a can. And I know you told me I can actually shake the can, right? And I
Yeah.
did. And I'm going to open this makgeolli. I'm going to pray that it doesn't explode. Young one's going, oh no. It didn't.
Oh.
Look at that. Oh, and the
Yeah.
color is beautiful. Let me see if I can show you this color. I'm gonna have fun tonight with all these drinks, but it's you know, I can see that you'll be able to make different flavors. Now you have mango and blueberry, but I'm sure there'll be more coming. So one of the, I have Fermentation Lab, which is a place where we serve beer. But the question that I get the most is, you go into a bar or, you know, gastropub and you see about 20 to 300 list of beers, right? It's really hard to choose which beer you need to drink. So Young, can you share a little bit about the etiquette maybe of choosing a beer, what kind of beer, and what types of beer there are, and how are you supposed to drink it? Because I know you can't drink it warm, but there are some that you can actually drink in room temperature. Is that correct?
Depending on the style of beer, beer has, I mean, to categorize everything, beer, you know, beer, it's a very wide spectrum. There's, you know, yeah, from like bottle aging, you know, barrel aging, and something that you purposely ferment over, or you make it sour. So it's, I think it would be the best is, you know, asking your bar manager. You know, usually they know the best. They're the best salesperson. You know, even me to this date, I haven't tried all different types of beer. That's still something I, you know, try to learn as we go. But also, you know, it kind of allows me to get very experimental with, you know, what I do. And there's no such thing as, there's no limit to it, you know. So that's a good part. Temperature wise, yeah, depending on a style of beer or, you know, personal preference, it you know, varies quite a bit. But usually the bar managers are trained to serve at the best, you know, serving quality of, you know, particular, you know, beer or not. So depending on which brewery tap room you go to, there are rooms with the different walk-ins set at different temperature. So, you know, some lagerish beer, like they would drink it at a colder temperature, and something like Saison, they would have a higher temperature to enjoy it at a bigger, more of a wine-shaped glass.
I guess it's all different because there are so many different types of glasses, just like wine. You know,
Right.
there are some glasses that you use for the red and the white. And, you know, I think for makgeolli, you can just drink it from a can now, or glass, or even a bowl, right? Traditionally, you can drink it from a bowl, which is really cool. A lot of questions I also get is, well, you know, what goes well, you know, with these drinks, you know, especially Korean, like makgeolli, and, you know, like chicken goes really well with with beer, right? I know, Young One, you learned that. But when it comes to wine, Cecil, people are a little intimidated because, you know, you're supposed to drink wine with cheese or dry meat, or steak or fish. But when it comes to Korean food, which is very flavorful, right? Korean food. How do you pair Korean food with wine?
Let me share my experience. When I started, you know, my winemaking career 13 years ago, you know, I really wanted to try all different kind of wine, and that was my you know, you know, my pocket was a very shallow, so I went to the food mart. I think I grabbed like, you know, the sale item, like $3 per bottle. All of them, I grabbed them all, and then just stacked them on the side, and then I drank it every day, each bottle with tteokbokki and, you know, yukgaejang and, you know, like all kind of Korean food. And it goes so well. It went so well. And I realized, you know, like wine, the goal to make a good wine is always a balance. So I want to make a balanced wine, like a fruit and acidity and bitterness and then sweetness and then the oak, all this balanced wine. But not many people talk about the texture of wine. But when you drink wine, it has a texture in it. So it's a little bit like a light diluted texture. Some wine has a little bit more, more for flavor than the body on the tongue. But some wine has a body to it. So especially Napa wine, it has a very silky texture in it. And that goes so well with the Korean food, actually. So for example, galbijjim, when you taste it, it has a very nice, flavor, complex flavor with the texture in it. And then if you drink with, Napa Cabernet, for example, my Innovatus 2014 Cab, it goes so well. So I really think that, texture, you have to think about texture of the drink and the food as well. That's another piece of a pairing, piece, I think.
Very interesting. So you can actually have snacks like tteokbokki with wine.
Yeah, tteokbokki is good too. I always go like it's space spiciness, like when, basically when you drink alcohol, when you eat food, it's cleansing, it has a cleansing factor. And then, wine is with the kind of, like texture in it, you actually, it's even better, cleanse your palate. So that's what I said. Yeah.
Well, I know that I tried, when you have Korean pork belly, we always think of having soju, but I'm not a big fan of soju.
Yeah.
Your cuvee, and it's outstanding. And it actually goes well with, makgeolli, and goes well with beer and wine, which was it's surprising to me.
Now, my husband, he's a very, he's very into food, and then he created this special dish, this time for her, the Chuseok festival. I think, like if you guys see on the menu, there is miso glazed pork belly. That's my husband's recipe for, like pork belly is specific for my cuvee.
Yeah, I know, and it's the hottest item right now from Sam's.
Oh yeah. Oh, good. My
Uh,
husband will be happy to hear that.
And now I know that as entrepreneurs, I mean, all of us, people see, what you sell and what you do, and they're like, wow, this is really great. But they don't really see how much work and, is involved, and how invested you are. You put your heart and soul. And still, there are times when you go, oop, I shouldn't have done that. There's some mistakes that you made, and maybe some memorable mistakes or stories maybe you have. Maybe you can share some of those stories. I feel like Young, you went through so much. I know you're only, what are you, like 40?
I'm actually 31.
Are you serious? But you have the experience of someone who's like in their 40s.
Yeah, I dropped out of Berkeley. I started selling alcohol when I was 19 in South Korea. I've been doing it for 12 years and never went back to school.
Wow.
And doing a little bit of everything.
But you have any stories you can share with us?
I could make a lot of Netflix, seasons.
Coming soon.
Recently, it's been very different because alcohol tends to be very offline heavy industry, and it's always about providing that experience, hands-on experience, whether it's drinking, tasting or events. You will see a lot of brands there. So with the COVID, all of that is essentially gone. Usually for me as a new brand, we promote our brand through tap rooms, tap takeover events, beer festival, wine tasting events. Same thing for probably Maku Carol. It's always a lot of events that are happening. We had a tap room in San Francisco. We had to, change to delivery friendly, delivery focused. So I think as a new brand, that's quite challenging. And this is a new challenge that I have in my 12 years. But, what can I do? Let's get closer to the customer. So right now I'm delivering directly to, door to door to all the houses. from San Fran to Santa Clara, San Jose, Pleasanton, Dublin, Walnut Creek, East Bay, everywhere. I didn't think about how far it was, and I just put all the zip code on my program, and I'll just deliver it once a week. Why not? But long days, I drive about 200 miles, and yesterday was from 8 in the morning to probably 7:30, just doing hitting restaurants, bars, or even houses to houses, and I make sure that I try to deliver at its freshest state. But it's pretty challenging because my Prius is not being able to handle the weight load anymore after about 35 cases of beer. It's
seriously, yeah, you're like
a Ferrari stage where like the body of the car is almost touching the wheel.
Well, you become the
the San Francisco hills are not helping either.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, I hear you.
And most of the customers don't even know that it's me that's delivering because you have a mask on, and whenever I go, I bring a doorbell and I stay behind and try to be careful with the whole virus. And when they are open to receiving the product, I either leave it on the floor and just check ID and then leave the premise.
Here's an idea. You need to create a costume for Tokebi. And then you can wear a Tokebi costume and deliver. That'd be fun. But I mean, like Carol, I know, pandemic has really affected all industries. But what I'm hearing is that for alcohol beverages, it's actually been beneficial. Is that true for you? I mean, are you seeing an increase in your sales of Maku during this pandemic?
I mean, fortunately, yes, we have. But I think that when you hear that and you see that in the news, it's typically because they're referring to the big brands. They've been stocked up in all these retailers, and consumers, went through a period of just loading up and stocking up, and kind of the losers here are the smaller craft beer brands. People at this time are not willing to try anything new, so they gravitate towards both a brand that they're familiar with, and B, something that's a little bit more price friendly. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for us, we did lose out a lot of opportunity because we're so new and we've only been in the market for 1 year, and our focus was 95% restaurants. And so when the pandemic hit, we weren't in any retailers. Mm-hmm. Until like we were just about to go into a whole bunch of retailers. And then all of them said, oh, we're not taking on any new brands right now because like shelf space is valuable, and we know that we're like, this is not the time to experiment. So they just kind of like, started putting in like Brooklyn beer and, even like the hot local beers in New York. So in the beginning, we took a hard hit, but eventually I think with people spending more time online, like we were able to shift our strategy and push everyone on to like to online retailers that we have that like deliver locally. And even that it doesn't do so much, but eventually people started asking for us at stores, and so slowly we're getting onto more shelves, and because our can looks so unique, it kind of moves, and once people try us, a lot of them purchase us again. So yeah, we've been very fortunate to have survived, and actually, I wouldn't say we're thriving, but we're definitely at a better place than pre-pandemic. And yeah, but I do know a lot of other small craft breweries that are having a very hard time right now.
Well, I hope after today you'll get a lot more orders of Maku. And I know this is such a heartbreaking time for you, Cecil, because fire in Napa is just heart-wrenching as we're watching the news. It's been, I can't even speak when I see the visual images of all the wineries and vineyards burning down. And I know you were in Napa all day today. I wanted to make sure you can make it for our session today. Can you, I know there's a lot going on over there. Can you share what's going on and how this fire has impacted the wine industry?
Oh, it's very devastating. A lot of people lost the house, and then, wineries are affected, damaged so badly by the fire. So the famous, Sterling Vineyard, Sterling Winery, they got their production site is wiped out, and also some of the vineyard that I managed, and they're big hit by the fire. So a lot of, not just by like physical damage, but the smoke in the air, it affects the grapes as well. So a lot of winery, they given up to harvest this year because it's not going to work. Even though they make the wine, it's not going to be a good quality for the sender of Napa. So they're giving up the harvest. Fortunately, I did harvest my grapes about 80%. I have a 20% left, and then I have to do it sooner than later. But the problem is also there is a power outage, so I don't have a power there. So I have to manage to rent a generator now, and it's everybody is looking for generator right now, so it's hard to get it. And people have to make a mask, and then we are working on the warning or evacuation warning or even evacuation order sign. So it's a very critical and it's very devastating situation. But Napa, the community is very strong, so we are helping each other, and then we are communicating each other and help out each other. So hopefully we get through it. And we call ourselves, Napa Strong, and it will stay strong.
Thank you so much, and I'll be praying for Napa and all the wineries there. And I know, we can go on for hours. There's so many items to cover, but I know there are many people on Q&A that just with questions. So I'm gonna just turn over to Q&A and ask some questions. There's I see a lot of questions about makgeolli. There's a lot of interest in makgeolli. And I think, Carol, you answered that the Cheongju part of makgeolli is becoming soju, right? And Cheongju, is that right?
No, so Cheongju is actually a specific different category, and there are brands that focus on it in Korea, but even in Korea, it's a very, very niche kind of category. So it almost tastes like sake, but not really. It's kind of yellowish. But yeah, it's because makgeolli, it's actually fermented to about between 14 and 16% alcohol. So Cheongju is around that percentage as well. So it's just fermented rice, but it's filtered out completely, so it's clear.
Okay, and there's question about how, if there's a plan of making makgeolli instead of importing it from Korea, I guess plan on making makgeolli here instead of importing it from Korea in the future. And why did you choose to import? It's not that you're importing, but you want to say something about that? If you decide to produce makgeolli, will you have probiotics in the beverage? We
tried to produce domestically because of that issue. I wanted to provide both an unpasteurized and a pasteurized option. And I probably looked at least 50 different breweries, sake breweries, beer breweries. I even tried wineries and cideries, but the expertise and talent and equipment is just not here for me to have made it work and made it scalable. It would have taken me, between $500,000 to $1 million. And it's also a completely new business model to have my own brewery or have my own brew pub. And it was just something I wasn't confident doing. But, that being said, I still try to make it work with a contract brewery here at a sake brewery in Maine. But there was no quality control, and Maku right now is a kind of combination of both sake production and beer production. So you need the equipment that handles all that rice in the fermentation vessels like sake, but for canning, pasteurization, carbonation, you need the beer equipment, and no one really had that. So what we were doing was, after the liquid was made, I hand canned, hand labeled, hand pasteurized, hand palletized. And this is when we were just selling a couple hundred cases, and it was just not something that was scalable. even for New York. So I decided early on, if this is something I really wanted to distribute nationwide and kind of create a new category in the US, like at this time, it's just better to work with a production facility in Korea. But yeah, I mean, we're hoping maybe down the road, I'm not sure if it's going to be a full brewery, but maybe like an experimental brew pub or something.
Great, thank you so much. Jenny's asking, I'm just gonna get to the question section. How has the booth influenced Tokyo Beer's taste, and how has it been being a Korean beer breaking into mostly white craft beer industry? I think you kind of covered that a little bit, but you can talk about your experience at the beer festival.
Yeah. So a lot of the beers that that we released at the booth in the States, were under my direction. So it was sort of, I had the time to experiment there as well. But I'm going a little bit more over in terms of getting more experimental because it's my brand and that's what Tokebis do. And usually in the beer industry is about probably 99.9% white, with guys and with the beard and everything. So I'm the actually only Asian guy, probably only Korean, only Asian guy mostly. And you go to beer festival, I'll be the only Asian guy, standing there at the booth. And all the white guys not white guys, the locals here will come and say, hey, what's this Asian dude doing over there? And they'll come out and check it out and then taste the beer, and I give them the explanation of the beer. That's how I attract a lot of people. Even when I make beer deliveries to local grocery stores, there I'm like the only guy who's making a delivery. So everyone's looking at me. I usually try to order a pint of beer and tell everyone the story about our company, and they all kind of pretend they're not listening but listening. And they all grab 4 packs to go home.
And then they love it, right? Just say,
and then I don't mind it. It's my previously schools, it was I was very few Asian, it's just normal to me, and just we're living in the USA, and I just try to do what needs to be done.
Well, there's thank you. There's a question about whether all of your drinks will be available in exported to Korea. I know, Cecil, you have bigger plans, right? About where Innovatis will take you next. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I like to share something good. So, especially the alcohol, it's just a so good medium that you share the love and the culture and along with food. So, although beer and makgeolli, they're very, it's a Korean cultural food drink, but wine is not there yet. But I wanna, as a Korean, Korean American, I wanna introduce how we can, marriage wine and Korean food. So I'd like to introduce more. I'd like to have a more opportunity to go and share that my experience and then my intake in the wine, personally interest and then personal experience with Korean. Korean in Korea, basically. So I'm planning to export more in Korea and also in Japan, and share more experience with them. Yeah, and have fun. Mm-hmm.
Youngwon and Carol, do you guys have plans?
Yeah. So I ultimately want to bring makgeolli back to Asia, not only Korea, but all the rest of Asia. But I do think that for us to penetrate the larger Asia, it is important for us to do well in Korea, just because people look up to Korea right now and like kind of take trends from there, like fashion, food, K-pop. People will take vacation and take their weekend shopping sprees in Korea and like go back home and look for it. So kind of like talking with potential distributors out there, to create, because the Korean industry, the makgeolli industry in Korea, they're having trouble targeting a younger generation. So, we have a different angle, like different kind of flavors, different kind of packaging, kind of a lot, like trying to make it cool again. So it will be really hard just because like makgeolli is so competitive there, and the margins are thin and the price point is so low. So I don't know if it's successful or not, but definitely gonna try.
Great. How about you, Youngwon?
I definitely want to get into Korean market, and then outside of US, but we're just way too early, to consider that. We launched it this February, so we're still early. And because of my experience in alcohol industry in Korea, I do have some demand to launch Doke beer there. But I don't want to export from here. But I would source breweries in Korea to produce. But with the pandemic, and I just couldn't. I didn't have time to do a quarantine for weeks, and try to start something there. And who's going to make all the deliveries in the Bay Area?
Right.
I'm missing. So until we figure that part out, it's gonna probably consider maybe next year or the year after to expand.
But you are shipping also, or
yes, we are shipping within California,
okay.
but not to Korea. It's just logistically, price does not work. Outside of that.
Right, but it will be available maybe in East Coast, so Carol can have some.
I'll just go there and try some, but yeah, just come here.
Yeah. Well, there's a question about nuruk. What's the difference between nuruk and beer and wine yeast? And where do you get nuruk? Can you, Carol or Cecil, answer that question?
So nuruk is a native yeast. Basically, like yeast can be made commercially, but nuruk is a homemade yeast. So everywhere, there are yeast, residing on every surface, everywhere, basically. So the leaf, tree leaves, and then the winery or, a home, everywhere there are some fungus and there are some yeast. And then if you culture them with kind of nice, appropriate nutrients for that, you can kind of grow your own yeast culture medium. So that's called, a native is called nuruk in Korean word. So nuruk is the base yeast for the makgeolli. But a lot of cases, we kind of lost the nuruk making culture in this era. Because we kind of lost the making, 술 making, custom in our culture when we are going through this, Japanese colonization. So now there is some movement that we are going to revive our 술 making practice with this nuruk revival. So I really, I want to be a part of it because I have some experience. I have a experience in winemaking, but I really want to preserve and, serve to our own culture making 술. And nuruk is, I would say, nuruk is a native yeast, and then yeast, when we call it, it's more like a commercialized yeast.
Right.
Also, Cecile, isn't nuruk also have like other bacteria and molds on top of just yeast?
Yes. So when we make a wine, we do sometimes co-ferment. So bacteria is a lot smaller, organism than yeast. Is a lot bigger. But yeast and bacteria, they all, work together to make it conversion. So bacteria, for example, in wine, they convert, malic acid to lactic acid. So it's all kind of conversion makes a complexity of the drink. So nuruk, just like you, Kara mentioned, nuruk is a combination of culture. Mm-hmm.
Depending on how you like to produce the flavor profile, you could have, for beer too, and the same thing for wine. You have a whole different, thousands of different types of yeast strains. And, I would like to use this particular yeast for this type of beer, which would produce this, type of flavor. Same thing for beer. You could have an open fermentation, and just literally you have a beer that's fermenting and with the wide open, fermenters, and is absorbing all the air from the outside, trying to capture all the bacteria to give a different type of, fermentation and aging experience. So it's a matter
fascinating discussion.
And I'll add one more thing.
Carol?
So a lot of people do make their own nuruk, just like makers make their own koji, but it's very kind of cumbersome, and you need a whole nother setting. You're basically making this cake of wheat or grains, whatever rice you want to put in it, and then like dampening it and putting in certain temperature. So like all of this wheat, all of the stuff in the air creates all this mold and bacteria, and but the issue with that is not only is it cumbersome, it changes every time you make it. So then your product isn't consistent. So a lot of people now, it's no longer about like homemade stuff is not really acceptable anymore in this day and age, right? Like if Youngwon is selling his bamboo beer and it tastes different every batch, like restaurants aren't happy, customers aren't happy. So just like this natural fermentation, it's something that like commercial brewers don't really do anymore.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I mean, we can go on and on, but unfortunately it is time for us to end our session. Thank you so much for joining me and our panelists today. All of you, I hope you've enjoyed the Chuseok Festival so far, and hope you'll check out many exciting events coming up during the rest of the festival, which goes through October 11th. If you enjoyed tonight's program and would like to make a donation to support the festival and KCI's work in the community, please consider making a donation. And you can click on the link provided in the chat box, or you can visit the festival website that will be shown at the end. And if you haven't tried our panelist products, I encourage you to try them out. You can order through their websites, which will be shown on the chat box. And also as part of the Chuseok Festival and Chuseok menu tasting will still be available at Sam's. All the URLs are included in the chat box. And I know we have many people asking more questions. So our panelists and I will stay on beyond 7 o'clock to answer some of the questions. But for now, we get to raise our glasses. Let me see if I can, I don't know how many I can hold up here. Glass and beer and makgeolli. Thank you again. And we end by saying Happy Chuseok, everybody. Happy Chuseok.
Happy Chuseok.
Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Thank you guys. So you guys doing all right?
Thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah, it's people are still around. Oh, great. Great job, guys. You can still answer questions if you want.
Yeah, so we have a lot of Q&A here. And I'm going to go and, so Eunju, you got to help me. Once they answer, do I have to click answer?
No. Just all the answered questions. You can ignore just the questions that are in the open. So there's a bunch for Youngwon. So it's very specifics about recommendations. So which beer would you add Soju to, if any?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You can't get
Unfortunately, I wouldn't add it. Adding Soju is a very cultural thing, and I think it also started with the Korean beer being very sort of light, and then Soju actually has a high residual sugar and a high alcohol that has body to it. So when you're adding sort of more of a boring Korean lager, shout out Soju, it has more alcohol, it has more balance, it has more sugar. That's why the whole Soju, I mean, trust me, I drink a lot of somek. I'm a expert somek maker, but with the craft beer is just a little bit different in how you drink it and consume. So I wouldn't add it, but long term I will make a Soju. So wait for that.
Okay, so a follow-up for you, Youngwon, is what is your favorite style of beer and why?
For me, it's depends. Like depends on occasion. Like, is it like a sunny outside? I'm really thirsty and I just want to drink some beer. That I'll drink bamboo pilsner. If something that I want to sit down at the end of the night and you just enjoy it and then sip it, I'll drink our stout. So to me, it's more of a where and how I drink it and who I drink it with. And personally, I really like to recommend that what people like than what I, like to drink at the moment. So, that's what I, normally do. That's why, when you look at our beer, it's a whole different, spectrum of beer where, you try it at, whatever spot that you'd like to drink it at.
Okay, and a few for, so for Carol, related to the flavors and the different flavors. So one is about whether you think that makgeolli supports the same kind of flavor experimentation as beer, and how do the makgeolli infusions relate to the same kind of new kind of beer innovations? And related to that is whether the flavoring of the Maku is your own invention, or do you see that also as a trend in Korea?
I'll answer the question first because it's easier. I went to Korea in 2017, and my friends took me to a makgeolli bar where the menu, I still have a photo of it, is literally like maybe 20 different like carafes with different colored makgeolli in it, and every, the menu item was like plum, cherry, lychee, strawberry, da da da. And I was so fascinated by that because, I just never thought to do that before. And then after that, I saw a couple of YouTube videos with some popular like Korean people drinking like honey makgeolli, where they would like put honey in makgeolli. And so I was like, oh, you can just make new flavors and make all these pretty colors by like adding fruit in it. So that was an idea I had. And then like kind of being in the beer industry, I knew that the future of beer and the future of alcohol was just kind of like flavor experimentation. And especially with the millennials and Gen Z, it's all about like different flavors, new flavors, and like very like quick and rapid trends. So I was like, oh, okay, like makgeolli is a great base. So like to just add flavors on top of. And there's two ways you can do that. You can either brew with, these flavorings in the actual brew, or you can just, blend it after. So obviously the second choice is much easier for, that kind of experimentation with flavors. In terms of innovation within makgeolli, I do think there's plenty of room to grow in terms of like where the product can go. Like right now I'm thinking about dry makgeolli. There's premium makgeolli with like higher ABV. There's so how you rate makgeolli, it's like 5 different things. One is the sweetness, one's the tartness, one's the carbonation, one's like the texture and the body. And one is like the earthiness, which comes from the nuruk. And in Korea alone, like they don't even really push flavors. That's really for the younger generation. But like for the country, there are thousands and thousands of different makgeollis, and even me as like a newbie makgeolli drinker was able to tell the difference right away between all of the different types. And so in terms of like, will it ever reach what, the craft beer scene has been now? I mean, beer has been around for so long, and there's billions of people, that are so aware of it. So I'm not sure if it's about like feasibility, but I think just like the awareness and the interest to garner, in terms of like the level of beer will take, probably past my lifetime.
All right. There's another question. Which Tokyo beer flavor is the best for light beer beer lovers, and which is the most popular?
That's always a tough question. Do you like your son or your daughter more? Again, it's different occasion, but I think for a lot of Koreans that are not used to craft beer, they're the most popular one tend to be our Pilsner. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar, very light, easy to drink, and then you get the tea flavor from the bamboo leaves. But also our wheat beer with the lemongrass and black and Szechuan peppercorn, that has been very popular as well. Some people don't like it because it's fragrant, but ones that do, they just order cases and just stock it up at home and drink it. It pairs well with, because of the lemongrass, peppercorn are very commonly used in Southeast Asian food. It pairs well with the food, whether it's greasy or spicy. And our gallon of lime beer, it almost tastes like ginger ale, but it's beer. So that one's been popular as well. uh,
Yeah, I think if somebody asked about Somek, if you try the Pilsner, you will never go back to Somek. I promise you that, because it's so smooth, so clean, and so light. And that's how I like my beer. So
Thank you.
try that. What are the restaurants in the Bay Area where we can find these amazing alcohols? Let's see, Tokyo Beer. I know, right now we're carrying you at Sam's, but I'm sure there are other restaurants.
Still very few, because recently I've been just, been on the road doing deliveries. So I didn't get a opportunity to do a little bit more sales, but we're planning to add more team members to the company, and hopefully that would allow me to be available at more places. San Francisco, we're at Sam's, we're at one of the Gus's Market location, Berkeley Bowl. You could come to our website and go to our Find Us page, and you will be able to find, although there are not that many. So just wait a few more months and you'll find more spots.
Yeah, and I would just, answer the audience who asked that question, that with the pandemic, it's been very difficult for restaurants to carry any products since they weren't open. So I think things will be very different, since now we are able to open indoor dining at 25% capacity in San Francisco. So I'm very hopeful and scared at the same time, but maybe we'll see more of Tokyo Beer and maybe Maku. I know Maku's all over the place right now.
You go to any Korean retail shop, you will see Maku.
Yeah. I started looking for it. When I went to Korean store, there's Uri Market, there's Kukje, and you're there. And I'm like, oh, I see Maku.
There's a place called Berkeley Bowl, which is a very big local grocery store.
Right. I love Berkeley.
And I was talking to a beer buyer today, and literally he's like, Maku, that one's moving pretty good.
Wow. And Berkeley Bowl.
You need to get onto a distributor.
Yeah, well, that's great, because
Game
Berkeley
changer.
Bowl is really, really big. And I know Innovatus wine, you can find Innovatus wine online. And now at Sam's, we are also carrying Innovatus wine right now. But is there anywhere else where they can find you?
So I'm going to be on the, I'll just follow Tokyo Beer. Wherever Tokyo Beer goes, I'll go with them.
That sounds good. There's a trio here.
Yeah.
All right. What is the shelf life of makgeolli, and does aluminum affect its being in plastic versus plastic bottles? Good question.
So shelf life, if it's unpasteurized, which means it's live and the yeast is still alive, people say that it's best to consume within a week or so, but it actually doesn't spoil. It just changes flavor. So it because it's continual fermentation, it becomes drier and more tart, and the alcohol level goes up. So it's just kind of like, if you're familiar with kimchi, you know how kimchi changes flavor over time.
Right.
I don't think it's dangerous. And also there's kinds of makgeollis that do age, or there's like second and third fermentation, and are kind of in the works for months. Pasteurized makgeolli, in terms of like trying to keep the same flavor and the profile and the flavor that you're intending to serve, we pasteurize, which means like the way we do it, we put our product under high heat to kind of kill off the yeast. And this is because by the time we import it from Korea, the taste has changed a lot. And also we can't have unpasteurized alcohol in a can because the cans would explode. So we pasteurize, and it lasts, best by 12 months. In terms of aluminum in the cans affecting the flavor, I think that the can industry has attacked that issue years ago, and there's not been any issues. I don't know, maybe Youngwon, you have any insight on this, but as far as I know, there's not any issues with aluminum.
There hasn't been an issue, and if you look at any of the recent craft breweries, you would only find the beers in cans. So the whole entire industry is shifting towards from bottles to cans. As you know, the cans are lighter, you could fit more. It's more logistically and more eco-friendly. It's all recyclable. It doesn't break, and it doesn't people don't get hurt. So cans in any new breweries, you will see cans and you won't see bottles. And logistically, like it's the cans are lighter to transport and to get to the brewery, and we could produce it. And when we threw it out, you could crush it, and it's much better. And although the bottles protect some UV lights, by being brown and green, but cans are it completely seals the content inside, so it's actually better for the products as well.
I know, like wine, it ages and it gets better, but I know I've heard like wine in boxes, and are they coming out in cans now?
Yes, they are. So a lot of, like even the closure, traditionally, the wine closure is a cork, which has a pores in it, so it kind of give a micro oxidation on the bottle.
Right.
But nowadays, for the ageability, a can is much better. Much more airtight, and then it's just a tight closure. So now a lot of wineries, they're starting making wine bottle like canned wine. It's available at many wineries, and then like Youngwon and I, we talked about making canned wine together too. So we'll stay in tune.
Come out soon.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's easy also when you're traveling, or going on picnic. It's easier to carry, cans rather than wine, because then you have to remember to bring the wine opener, right?
Yeah.
And with the transportation, like there's a weight restriction on all the highways,
Right.
and the bottles is really hard to transport efficiently.
That's
Yep.
true. All right. I'm wondering if you think U.S. residents will make makgeolli at home to the same extent as people were home brewing beers several years ago. It's so easy to make and easy to drink. I don't know.
I mean, I think it goes back to my point before. It's really about awareness and interest in the product. And then an additional layer of difficulty or complexity is that noodle is quite hard to find. So I'm in a new Makgeolli Facebook group, and this was before Maku. And it's doubled. It's went from like 700 members to like now 1,400. But the number one question from all over the world is like, where can I get noodle? They don't sell it anywhere near me. Can someone send it to me from Korea? So at one point I was like, oh, should I start a side business of shipping out noodle?
Yeah. I think so.
Also, actually, I know one person in Los Angeles. He created this institute called Suul Institute, and he's creating the noodle. So he has a kind of factory, like a small kind of laboratory. He created different type of noodle using different type of trees and like different rice. So I'd like to see him growing in this like just preserving our culture, creating different type, and then like very creative and new work for us to try at home to like make a makgeolli basically.
That's cool. That's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good. Yeast is unique in San Francisco for sourdough. How does that affect our regional wines? Cecile, can you answer
No,
that?
sorry. Well, what's the question?
Yeast is unique in San Francisco for sourdough. How does that affect our region's wine?
Oh, so sourdough, Acetobacter is a kind of, like make a sour taste in the product. But, depending on the yeast, some yeast has a different, create a different profile of a flavor. And the sourdough, that is cannot use in winemaking, basically. So it's a very different type. And then San Francisco, they use a particular yeast and even bacteria to create that type of sourness in their bread. So bread is, and wine is, and beer is, and then makgeolli noodle, they're all different organisms. Like, like we are Korean, but they're like, different, ethnic groups. So it's like that. So they have their own characteristic to create something different character.
Great. Cecile, someone asked, how hard is it for Asian Americans to break through the wine industry in Napa? Are there many Asian vintners?
Oh, vintners, not many Asian. So that's why, like Yohan said, if he showed up in a, like beer scene, he's the only one who's Asian. So he has a good attention, actually. So I am the same way. It's hard to break it in, but at the same time, I had a lot of supporter because I'm a minority and then I'm female. So I really appreciate that, kind of support that, minority and female as a winemaker. And I grew from there. And now, like we're getting more and more. So hopefully I can see, hopefully I can do something about it. So I can create some foundation that that I can bring in more Asian and female in the wine industry in Napa.
Mm. So, what is your draw passion to Suul?
Me,
That's
I
a big
love Suul. Oh, I should say Suul makes me courage. I am very I am a little shy when I especially English speaker. I was born and raised in Korea, so whenever I speak in English, I need some kind of boost. But wine was there, and then whenever I'm working in the industry, I mean as a production side, I sip it, and I become like very natural person.
Well, thank you so much, you guys. All the questions have been answered, and we are finished. So now you guys get to go back and enjoy your Suul, or in Yohan's case, I think you need sleep more than Suul right now. Driving around to over 200 miles, my goodness.
Yes, I have one more ride tomorrow.
I know. I wish we were all together, and kind of celebrating face to face. I'm sure that day will come. And I know, Cecile, you had a pretty long day, but thank you so much. And thank you, Unju.
Thank you
And
so much.
You guys were awesome. I know you weren't able to monitor all the comments as we went along, and then I was getting texts from family and friends throughout. Everybody just raved about Jeannie's moderation and all of you guys, the conversation. You guys were awesome.
Thank
you so well.
Thank you
yeah.
so much, all of you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you to all, any attendees, anybody who's still online, thank you for joining. We had a fantastic turnout and lots of comments in the chat box, and all just really super positive and encouraging, and how proud everybody is that there are these amazing young Korean American Suul makers in America. So really kudos to all of you, and
That's
thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
This was
great.
Happy Chuseok, everyone.
That's right. Yeah. I know you can't, do anything, but well, Unju, you gotta go get your Innovatus wine now.
Yeah.
I finished my Tokyo beer. Right. Wait, hold on. Hey, Carol, you want to throw me a Maku? You got a Maku?
There you go.
It's open. I don't know if I can throw it.
Oh, I got it. I got it. Thank you.
Perfect timing. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity. And I hope, with this, people will look you guys up and increase, the sales and the exposure of all your products.
Wait,
A
Cecile,
lot of people are buying. Yeah,
Thank you, Jeannie,
anybody,
so much for everything. You prepare like this, panel discussion with great questions and then, yeah, great effort. Thank you so
well,
much.
time went by so quick, and let me tell you, we're getting orders, and we have to kind of stop. I had to stop today because I have to be here, but I'm delivering them myself too. But a lot of people wanting sur package is going out really well, so they want to taste everything: the wine, the beer, and makgeolli.
Yeah, no,
And
a
then,
friend of mine said during this, like as soon as this ended, she said she went and she ordered everything from everybody.
oh. Well, all right. Well, hopefully, Carol, you'll fly out and try some food when you come here, right?
Oh, I would love to meet
Yeah.
everyone.
We'll
Yeah,
have to. That's right. We'll have to definitely have an in-person reunion next time.
for
Social
Yes.
sure.
distance, safe, but
That
you
sounds
come out
great. Yes, for sure. Well, thank you so much, and have a
Thank you,
great
Jeannie.
night.
Thank you,
Yes.
Jeannie,
Take
for
care,
collaborating.
everyone.
Thank you,
Stay
everybody. Happy
safe.
Chuseok.
Happy
Bye.
Chuseok.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir.